This video is going to feature two different Bloody Palace runs, both of which were suggested to me in comments on some of my previous videos. Shoutouts to those lovely people. So today, I have decided to answer questions that some people have had. Can you beat the Bloody Palace under these various conditions? The first run being featured is with my boy Nero. I took up the challenge of clearing the palace only using Devil Breakers. There was another comment that suggested 1 Devil Breaker per 10 floors, but in all of my attempts I struggled with a full suite of 8 Devil Bringers. Maybe another time on that one. The main issue that makes this challenge difficult is that if Nero takes damage while using any of his Devil Breakers, they immediately break. On my initial runs, I tried mixing it up with various Devil Breakers, and I made 2 discoveries. Did you know that Rawhide has a combo B on the ground and in the air if you pause your input for a moment after the first hit? That was my first discovery. My second discovery was that most Devil Breakers suck by themselves. Rawhide is decent damage, but it takes a while to do the whole combo and never really felt worth it. Helter Skelter was a high commitment move that also didn't feel like it did much of anything. Punchline was stylish, and riding it around did some decent damage, but it stayed active for a long time, which meant that if I got hit at any point, it would simply break. Gerbera was great for defense, but I needed something that packed a punch. Tomboy and Overture were my go-to damage dealers, and after numerous failed attempts trying to add variety to my lineup, I went full Oonga Boonga mode. Tomboy absolutely obliterated the early stages. Its moveset was extremely fun to use, and it was really satisfying to do big ascending slashes and cut right through enemies repeatedly. The drawback to it was that it was pretty much always active, so if I got hit, it would break. I decided that its damage output was more than sufficient to take on this risk though, and after Tomboy broke, I had Overture to fall back on. Overture did pretty big damage, it was relatively quick to come out, and I was able to jump cancel out of the end of the move to mitigate any risk of it breaking when I used it. There was one more quirk to Overture that I noticed while fighting Artemis. If I spammed the move, the first hit did substantial damage, but every subsequent hit was much weaker. Overture, I found out, had something of a cooldown period until it would do maximum damage again. Once I realized this, I started to time my Overture uses rather than spam the move. For Cavalier Angelo, I tried to stay above him and use Overture to hit the top of his head so that my hits didn't get blocked by his cape wing shield thingy. It was also possible to parry Angelo with Overture, and it only took a couple of parries before he got knocked off balance and I got some free damage in. All in all, the fight wasn't that bad with Overture, because when I stayed above him, he only had 1 attack that could even hit me, and he didn't even use that attack most of the time. Furies were a bit trickier than most normal enemies, but I just waited until they stopped attacking, and they got dusted. Malphus was kind of a pushover like always, and then I began the long road to stage 101. I want to note that in any of these runs, stage 81 and up are always going to be the longest floors because of the difficulty setting and general enemy lineup this far in. One of my favorite things about Tomboy is how high it allows an enemy to be carried. Once I had taken them to the skies, I would jump and do this spinny move to follow them all the way back to the ground, bounce them back up, and send them away with another final slam. Landing that sequence wasn't too hard, but it was one of the most satisfying things to do to any enemy. The Cerberus fight wasn't much to write home about either, but some weird things did occur. For anyone unfamiliar, Cerberus has 3 phases and he cycles between them: fire, ice, and lightning. The arena also morphs to reflect the phase that Cerberus is currently in. While in ice phase, these frozen structures appear and are supposed to shatter when Cerberus in the area shift to a different phase. In my fight, Cerberus went from his ice phase into lightning, but the frozen structures stayed in the arena. The second weird thing that happened was when I stunned all 3 of his heads. They would typically lose any sort of flame, frost, or lightning visual effects when he would fall to the ground, but even though I knocked him to the ground, his head was still burning. I don't think it affected anything, it was just a weird visual bug. By the time I got to the boss gauntlet, I had amassed 30 minutes on the timer. timer. My plan was to play the fights as slow as I needed. I took a punchline in the event that I lost my first overture at some point, which happened in the very first Urizen fight. I hung back, let the fist go to town on the crystal, and then moved on to the next fight. I tried to limbo under this beam, but all I ended up doing was breaking my arm. All that I had left were a stack of overtures and a dream. Once the crystal broke, Urizen was pretty squishy, and the crystal was even easier to break the second time. By the end, I lost another 2 arms, and there were no more rest points to stock up on Devil Breakers, so I had to do my best to keep the arms that I had left. The last Urizen fight was the easiest of the 3, and I took him out without losing a single arm. In order to actually hit Virgil more than once with Overture, I had to cycle between a ground hit and aerial hit. Because of the cooldown associated with Overture's damage, only the first hit had any meaningful impact on damage, but I wanted as many hits on him as possible to work toward his stagger. When Virgil finally did get staggered, I was able to take big chunks off of him, but then I was met with the Devil Trigger issue. In the Bloody Palace, Virgil continuously heals in Devil Trigger, similar to his Mission 19 fight. I waited out Virgil's Devil Trigger because I couldn't risk losing an arm. As a result, he got unmitigated healing until he decided to leave DT. It made the fight longer, but I had tons of time to spare, so I was not in a rush. His doppelganger was easily taken out, and it was just more waiting. It ended up getting pretty sweaty towards the end because I somehow managed to lose 3 arms, and if I lost the last one, then the run would be dead. Thankfully, I got another stagger. I used Devil Trigger to stun Virgil for just a little bit longer as he was getting up, and because of that, I was able to land the killing blow. But I'm not done yet. Now we swap over to Dante. Before I get into this run though, I just want to say that if you enjoy the video and the stuff that I do, then please consider subscribing. It would mean the world to me. So, for this Dante run, I terrorized the Bloody Palace by only using Rebellion and Ebony and Ivory. The person who suggested this challenge also said that Royal Guard and Sin Devil Trigger were allowed, just no Quad S or moves that would use Devil Sword Dante. I only ended up using Sin Devil Trigger in a couple of situations, mostly as a panic button when my health would get low and I felt like I was at risk of dying. I was able to build up a ton of time pretty quickly by killing enemies with a high style rank, especially thanks to Dance Macabre and Honeycomb Fire. Dante's moveset with Rebellion and his trademark dual pistols was extremely solid for dealing with any situation, and I honestly never felt like I lacked any tools to survive throughout the various stages. I tried my best to take full advantage of his moveset. The only move I don't think I really used was Twosome Time. I somehow set a new time record on stage 34, and trust me, I've done the Bloody Palace a lot, so getting that on a restricted run really surprised me. I beat Artemis only using Aerial Rave in my 1 move per stage run, so the fact that I had a full sword and gun moveset to play around with against her was a breath of fresh air. I was able to do basic things like shoot down her projectiles, shoot down her other projectiles, and I even used Rebellion's nifty boomerang function. I used Sin Devil Trigger to break out of the Impusa Queen's grab, and then I fell right back into the exact same grab. I kept trying to play around with the Proto-Angelos because I had so much time to kill, but all I ended up doing was losing half my health. Fine, I learned my lesson, no more toying with big sword demons. Oh look, a big sword demon to toy with. Cavalier Angelo is one of my favorite bosses. He's fun to Royal Guard, parry, dodge, just generally mess around with. I took some time to parry his attacks and I got the upper hand, but like I always do, I tried to take it too far and just ended up losing half my health again. Okay, I definitely learned my lesson this time. I'm not gonna mess around with any other big sword guys. Wait a second, who's that over there? The Cerberus fight got super sketchy. I took a ton of bad hits early on and ended up playing scared for a majority of the fight. I hung back, let Round Trip and Honeycomb Fire do a bunch of work, and took the slow and steady route. Once I got back to an amount of health that allowed me to tank a hit without dying, I got more aggressive. Overall though, the fight took almost 10 minutes, but I still had plenty of time left. If you've never tried using Honeycomb Fire on an airborne enemy, I would highly recommend it. 95 brought me to the brink of death, so on 96 I stayed in the air by jump canceling Aerial Rave until I got most of my health back. In the first Urizen fight, I took far too much damage. The game doesn't generally give any free healing until after the third Urizen fight, so losing almost half my health in the first fight was really bad. Luckily, the second fight was a complete 180 from my performance in that previous one. I broke the crystal and was able to one-phase him. Typically, once his health gets low, Urizen will Devil Trigger and respawn his crystal, but in rare circumstances like I got here, a perfectly timed stagger provided enough time to kill him before either of those things happened. This Royal Guard trick in the third Urizen fight allowed me to instantly gain max Devil Trigger. Whenever he got close to a phase change, I entered Devil Trigger and spammed Stinger because I was able to immediately regain all of that Devil Trigger meter whenever he would do his AoE knockback. He went down without issue, and it was time for everyone's favorite motivated Sparta brother. It was a pretty textbook fight up until Virgil got to low health. I would definitely say his final phase is the weakest aspect of the fight for me. I lose all my confidence and I start getting hit by everything, and it was no different in this run. He had about 1/3 of his health left and I was at full, but then I blinked and we both had a 1/4 HP left. I got hit within an inch of my life, and I decided it was time to pop the panic button as Virgil faded into a rain of hellfire. And that's all for these challenges. Overall, I really enjoyed these runs. Nero's was pain, but Dante's was just a good time. If you guys have any challenge run ideas you'd like to see, either for the Bloody Palace or the campaign, drop a comment and I might attempt some of them. I already have a list from comments on my other videos, but I always love seeing the different ideas you all come up with. For now though, that's all from me. So take care, and I hope you have a wonderful day.